On this super review live, we're going to take a look at the Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2 Bluetooth in-ear monitors. So this is a little, true wireless IM that I've been using for the past week and comparing with the Apple AirPods Pro as well as the Samsung Galaxy Buds Plus. And throughout this review, I'm going to start by talking about the build and the physical aspects and how they stack up there, but then I'm also obviously going to talk about how they sound. And in the end, I'm going to give you a rating for these things, but I think I'm also going to give you a little bit of a ranking between these three different true wireless IEMs. And so now this review, like my most recent reviews, is live. If you've got any questions for me, please leave them in the live chat. And after I've gotten done going through those different things, I'll take a look at the live chat and answer your questions. And they can be questions specifically about the Momentum True Wireless 2. You can ask me, why does it have so many words in the name? You can ask me questions like, what do they look like? Whatever kind of questions you got, feel free to queue up those questions now. But let's go ahead and dive into the true wireless Momentum, whatever concoction of words that Sennheiser wants to go with this. So again, like I mentioned, I'm going to start by talking about the build, and let's go ahead and go to the table so you can see it up close. So yeah, so we got the true wireless, the Momentum True Wireless 2. Man, what a mouthful of a name that is. Not as clever as AirPods Pro or Samsung Galaxy Buds Plus, but anyway, that is neither here nor there. I'm not reviewing the name, we're reviewing the product. In terms of build quality, look, it's a pretty well built case in general. Like it feels pretty nice, but if I'm perfectly honest, like I don't like it as much as I like the case of the AirPods Pro or even the Galaxy Buds Plus for a couple of reasons. One, it does kind of have this fabric covering on the outside that gives it sort of a quote unquote premium feel to it, but I don't know, really it just kind of feels like any other sort of budget plastic or budget true wireless case. It's kind of just plastic, whereas the AirPods Pro, they've got this gorgeous lid, and even the Galaxy Buds Plus, they're not quite as nice as the AirPods Pro, but the plastic is a little bit on the thicker side, and it's got a nice, slim profile that I like. The Sennheisers, they'll fit into a pocket fairly comfortably, but they're not as comfortable as these. Basically, these things, you slide these things into a pocket, they're just going to disappear, and that for me is actually really important. That might not be important for you. I'm kind of curious if you guys are watching in the live chat. Let me know if how easy and comfortable these things go into a pocket is important for you. But for me, for a product like this, it's actually pretty important. Just because, this is kind of a product of convenience and I want it to be around me at all times. How large it is definitely matters. But that's only one aspect of the build. We can also talk about the buds. I'll zoom in here so you can take a look at these buds. They're a little bit on the chonky side. Let's see, compared to the Galaxy Buds, and we're probably going to get a bunch of Bluetooth interference here. Something's bound to go wrong, but you can kind of see how all these things stack up next to each other. And the Sennheiser Buds are definitely, like I said, they're a little bit on the chonky side. In terms of fit, they actually, they plug into my ears and fit pretty well. Let's go ahead and do a quick demo. They slide in pretty effortlessly, and you can see that in my ear they're not like hanging out or anything like that. I think that they fit pretty well. They take up a lot of room on the inside of my ear, and a side effect of that is just that if I'm wearing these for like 30 minutes or so, it's not a problem, but any longer than that, I just start to be aware of them in my ear, much more so than something like the AirPods Pro, whereas these little guys right here, right, they just slip into your ear. And I don't know, I could wear AirPods Pro all day. I've worn the Galaxy Buds Plus to sleep. The Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2, not quite. What else can we say? I mean, I guess that's about as much as I can tell you about the build quality of it. Maybe one other thing worth mentioning, in fact, I think this is actually one thing that's very seriously worth mentioning, is that of these three true wireless earphones I've got, the Momentum is the only one that doesn't support wireless charging. I I don't know, I feel like I've gotten pretty used to wireless charging, so for me, that omission is a bit of a bummer. It's not the biggest deal. It does have USB-C charging, which is fairly convenient, but I don't know. I do wish that they had wireless charging. It just means, like, again, these things are a product of convenience, and the less that I have to think about this thing, the better. And having to plug this thing in versus just kind of toss it on a charger means I have to think about it just a smidge bit more. In terms of battery life, like they claim, I think 8 hours in the buds or 7 hours in the buds. And I'll be honest, I did not listen to these things for 7 hours straight, so I can't confirm that. But in my use, the battery life seems strong. Like I basically never had to charge these things. So let that speak for, let that say what it will to you. Anyway, I don't know, what else should I talk about in terms of build quality? Not too much, so I guess we can get talking about the functionality of these, right? They are a Bluetooth electronic, and ostensibly it's gonna be a little bit more complicated than your average IEM, and it is. So let's see, Bluetooth, just the general basic stuff, connectivity and stuff was relatively strong. I would say that Bluetooth, like the distance, connection distance, wasn't as powerful as it is on the Apple AirPods Pro, which is fine. Not a lot of things have connection quality as good as the AirPods Pro, but it was about on par, frankly, with the Galaxy Buds. So I think that the Bluetooth range on these is strong. It's, well, it's about average. General connectivity was, you know, nice and solid. I didn't really have any hiccups or anything like that. The one thing that I did have some issues with was with the tap controls, right? And this is just kind of an issue I have with a lot of wireless earbuds like these that have tap controls, or really anything that's got touch sensitive controls, is it can be a little bit finicky. And when I first put these things in my ears, I was having kind of the same issues that I have with the Galaxy Buds Plus, where as I'm fitting them into my ears, I was accidentally tapping and activating the pause play function. But the Sennheiser Momentums, they actually have a really nice app that you can go into the app and you have basically full customizability, full customization. Wow, that is not a word I should be struggling with, but you can totally customize the controls. You can configure the single tap function, you can configure the double tap function, the triple tap function. I think there's even a press and hold function. You can customize all of that. And the out of the box configuration, I think, is not good for a couple of reasons. One, because it means that, you know, that single tap toggling pause and play is just kind of a pain in the butt. The other thing is I just think that the default configuration is really complicated. Like it divides volume control on one ear and skipping tracks forward and back on one ear. And maybe you've got the patience to memorize that kind of stuff, but I don't. Especially because I'm going back and forth between a lot of different products. I kind of need just a simple setup. And thankfully with that app, you're able to set up a pretty simple setup. So for single taps, I was actually able to completely disable them, which makes these things much more usable in my opinion. I've got playback set to double tap, and then I've got press and hold set to enable and disable Bluetooth noise, or not Bluetooth, just the noise canceling, the active noise canceling, or enable and disable the sort of transparent pass-through mode, which is kind of all the rage these days. I guess we can get talking about the active noise canceling and stuff like that. I mean, one thing that's worth calling out just kind of up front is that because of that chonky fit that I talked about, how much room these things take up in the inside of my ear, because of that, they actually just passively block out more noise than something like the AirPods Pro by quite a bit. That's kind of the same thing that I could say for the Galaxy Buds, is these things take up a lot of room in the ear and they block up a lot of sound. Same here, but when you turn on the active noise canceling, it does improve that noise cancellation, obviously, but it doesn't do it to the extent that the AirPods Pro do. Like, it just doesn't feel as impressive, partly because you're not starting from 0 to 100, you're kind of starting from like 70 to 100. So that ramp up isn't quite as impressive. But in head-to-head, when I was actually like comparing these things, like standing next to a refrigerator or running a fan or running my dryer, noise cancellation was, I would say, roughly equal. I think that the AirPods Pro did a better job at canceling out like the low frequency rumbles, whereas these do a better job of canceling out sort of the high frequency sounds. And I think part of that is just because, again, these things are getting a lot of that noise cancellation for free, just passively by plugging your ears. And I think that is attenuating the higher frequencies, whereas the noise canceling technology in here might be a little bit better. And so it's doing a little bit better job with the low frequencies. Now versus the Galaxy Buds Plus, remember, these things don't have any noise canceling, but I don't know, does that matter to you? Maybe. Wow, okay, that was a lot of functionality to talk about. Just checking my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. One thing worth calling out is, so like the AirPods Pro, these have, the Momentums have a functionality where if you're listening to music and you take one out of your ear, it'll pause your music, and then when you plug it back into your ear, the music resumes. And that's cool. That's a functionality that I like, but I don't really like the execution here on the Momentum. So, I mean, like the AirPods, they've got kind of an infrared receiver, infrared sensor on the inside of the bud that detects when it comes in and out of your ear. And it just seems a little bit flaky in my experience. Not so much in like, it never cuts out the music when it's in my ear. It's more that when I'll take an earbud out of my ear, music pauses, and then I'll maybe have a conversation with someone because that's the reason I took it out of my ear. Sometimes while I have the bud in my hand, the music just starts playing again. And if I've got the other bud still in my ear, that can be a little distracting. So I don't know if that's a thing that they can fix with firmware. It seems like a thing that could probably fix with firmware, is just kind of adjust the sensitivity of that or adjust how quickly it returns or it resumes playing music. But that was an issue that I had with the functionality. Just kind of feels a little bit flaky because of that. But yeah, I mean, that is, right? That's the functionality and the build of these three earphones compared. I guess we can go ahead and talk about the sound quality. And, well, I mean, I guess it makes sense, right, that Apple and Samsung might do sort of the electronics aspect of this a little bit better than Sennheiser. Sennheiser is an audio company first and foremost. They're not so much an electronics company like these folks. So you would expect that audio is where the Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2 excels. Unfortunately, in my opinion, well, I could see a lot of people actually preferring the audio here, but for my tastes, I actually prefer both the Samsung and the Apple. Maybe that's going to be a controversial statement, but let me go ahead and justify that with a little bit more detail. So the sound signature here on the Momentum is, I would say, kind of a fun sound signature. It's definitely a very strong V, where there's a lot of bass emphasis and even kind of a lot of treble emphasis, and the mid-range tonality, in my opinion, suffers for that. Now, one nice side effect of that fun tonality is that the sound stage is actually pretty impressive here on the Momentums versus the others. I think that the sound stage here is definitely stronger. And then I think also the sense of detail, I don't know if it's the actual detail or if there's actually details that I'm perceiving with these that I'm not perceiving in those, but because of the treble emphasis, there is definitely an added sense of detail perception. Maybe part of it too is the fact that these run on aptX, whereas both the Galaxy Buds and the AirPods Pro, they max out at AAC as a Bluetooth codec. So that much is going for them. It's just more in the tonality that I find these things a little bit lacking. That mid-range tonality is just, I don't know. If you're into vocals, these are not going to be very strong vocal IEMs. If you're into just kind of bass thump and like sparkling, tingling highs, you might actually prefer the Momentums. But I mean, even if that's the sound signature that you like, there's a couple of quibbles that I have with the sound quality here. So one, that elevated bass, in my opinion, it's too elevated, and it's not just like, oh, that's more bass than I like. I'm an anti-bass purist or something like that. It's more that the bass is so elevated that it starts to get a little bloomy and boomy, and it kind of clouds out the lower mid-range. And so if you hear a nerd like me talking about why an earphone or a headphone might have too much bass, that's kind of why. And I think that is a thing that these things suffer for. And then in the treble region, it's elevated and it's nice and sparkly, I guess, but it can be fatiguing, and definitely more fatiguing in my experience than the other IEM. So like, I'm not like the kind of person that demands to have neutrality in everything that I listen to. I generally do prefer a neutral tonality, but that's not the only thing I'm after, right? Mostly what I'm after is just nice, clean sound. And if you're gonna go for a fun sound signature, those are things that you need to avoid, right? You need to avoid being boomy and kind of clouding out the mid-range. And if you're gonna go with a little bit of treble emphasis, you need to avoid being fatiguing. On the bright side, I didn't really have any issues with sibilance here with the Momentums, but it was just, in my experience, a little bit fatiguing. I don't know if I've got anything else to say about the comparison. So I guess we'll just get into the conclusion. So out of 5 stars, I would give the Momentum True Wireless 3 stars. It's a True Wireless 2, it gets 3 stars. So it's not a bad set. It's just, I think up against this competition, it doesn't really do much, in my opinion, to justify the price premium, right? For 150 bucks, you get the Galaxy Buds Plus. I think those sound fantastic. For 250 bucks, you get the AirPods Pro. I think they also sound really nice, and you get the benefit of noise canceling. For another 50 bucks on top of that, you get, I don't know what you get. You get more customizable controls. That's pretty cool. And you get a fun sound signature that I think a lot of people will like, but for my taste, I don't know. That's about it. I mean, I would, in terms of my preference, how I would rank these, I would say AirPods Pro and Galaxy Buds are really close, and then these are a fair step below them. In terms of sound signature, I would say Galaxy Buds Plus a little bit above AirPods Pro. In terms of functionality, I would say AirPods Pro way above Galaxy Buds Plus. And then overall, yeah, you kind of heard it here. So that is my review of the Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2. If you've got any questions for me, go ahead and leave them in the chat, and I am going to attend to that now. Ray saying, Galaxy Buds max out on Samsung's scalable on Samsung devices anyway. Pretty sure scalable scales higher than AAC. That's interesting. So, I mean, I've only really used the Galaxy Buds Plus on my Sony Xperia phone. I'm kind of curious about the scalable. Scalable, is that another Bluetooth codec that I'm not actually aware of? Interesting. Michael Pankhurst, good friend of mine, showing up in the live chat. What's up, homie? Shovik saying good morning, good morning, good evening. It's evening here in California. Where you at that it is the morning? I guess it's Tuesday. I'm here on a Monday. It is Memorial Day Monday, so I've got the day off, chilling at home, but I do have work dreaded in the morning. And then Shovik saying, how's fitting? Does it fall off? And battery life. So I talked a little bit about battery life in the review. They claim 7 hours of battery life on the Buds, which is strong. Like, that's almost as good as the Galaxy Buds Plus. And then the case, they claim like an extra 21 hours. So overall, like around 28 hours, which is good. I can't confirm that because I did not listen to these things for 7 hours straight. That sort of use case, like that makes a lot of sense if like you want to listen to these things all day at work and you're in a position where you can just leave these things plugged into your head for 7 hours at a time. Maybe a flight also is a pretty good example of where you might be able to do that, but I haven't done either of those things in the last week. So I didn't get a chance to test that 7 hours of battery life. Frankly, like the AirPods, you know, they have like they got like 3 to 4 to 5 hours of battery life. I've never killed these things while listening to them in a single go, so that was a mistake. So yeah, I can't really comment too much on the battery life. In terms of fit, let me go ahead and demo that again just real quickly. I think that, you know, they fit me pretty comfortably and they're definitely secure. Let's go ahead and let's do a little head shake. They're still plenty secure. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, they're fairly chonk, like I mentioned. They take up a lot of space in my ear, so they're fairly tight fitting. The other thing is that they're just very lightweight, and I just dropped it, so I'm gonna pick that up. This is what happens when you do it live, folks. But yeah, they're very lightweight, so I don't see these things coming loose in your ear during a workout. So yeah, Ahmed, while asking thoughts on the WF-1000XM3. So Sony makes, you know, the 1000XM3 originally as a headphone. That is the WH. Ahmed is asking me about the WF, which is the lesser known, but I think much better true wireless version. I don't know why they even went with the same name, because frankly, there's not a lot that they have in common, apart from the fact that they're Bluetooth headphones, right? So the wireless version, I think I like quite a bit more than, the wireless version I like better than I like the headphone version, which is also wireless, but this is where terms have gotten to us. Anyway, yeah, I think, I don't have as much experience with those Sonys, the WF XM3s. I don't have them here with me, so I haven't been able to listen to them and compare these things directly here. I have compared the XM3s versus the AirPods Pro, and I found that I preferred the AirPods Pro, but I think I found that the XM3s were still a little bit on the bassy side for my taste, but I don't remember having the same issues with the bass that I have here with the Momentums, where the bass here is a little bit on the bloomy side. I don't remember that so much on the XM3s. So it's hard for me to say without having them here in my hands, but I would say that I would prefer the Sony XM3s to the Sennheisers as well. In my rank, I would probably still be like AirPods Pro and Galaxy Buds Plus, roughly even, the Sonys, and then the Sennheisers below that. Dean Tark asking, does the case have room for foam tips or something like that? That's actually a really good question. Can I reach my foam tips and able to try it? Let's see. All right, bear with me. This might go horribly wrong. Are those foam tips? Those are chunky foam tips. Those are small foam tips. I've got a bunch of tips, folks. And those are about medium-sized foam tips. All right, so let's go ahead and try putting some foam tips on these things and seeing how it fits. So these foam tips are kind of rounded foam tips. They're not exactly the standard boxy square shape, but I think in terms of size, they should be pretty comparable. Here, take the stock silicone tip off, and that does fit. I think the nozzle here on the Momentum is actually a little bit on the small side. It's a little bit on the narrow side. And so while this fits and plugs in pretty well, I gotta say it's not the most, I don't know, maybe that is secure enough. It doesn't give me the most confidence, but all right, let's see. Here's the test. Does it fit into the case? And the answer is yeah. So that little light comes on, which indicates that they are charging, which suggests to me that they fit into the case just perfectly fine. That's actually kind of a nice little bonus there. I know a lot of people like to do tip swapping, and if you're using something like the AirPods Pro, which I've tossed off my table so I can't show you right now, but if you're using something like the AirPods Pro, you don't really have the same options for tips as you do with, your typical IM, and it looks like here with the Momentums, you at least have that option. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. Thanks for taking the time, just by the way, watching me do this stuff live. I hope you guys enjoy this format. Charlie trains in the UK. What's up from the UK? In the like holes where the earbuds rest. Okay, sorry, that was just reading a little bit more about what Dean Tark was asking. Fixion's asking, hey, which are the most comfortable for you? Sorry, I just tuned in, so I have missed it. So yeah, between these three, the most comfortable by far, I would say, is the AirPods Pro. The fit is so easy in the AirPods Pro. Now, a side effect of that easy fit is that they don't do the best at passive noise canceling. But for me, that's not so much a big deal because they do active noise canceling actually pretty well. So in terms of comfort, the AirPods Pro, hands down. Next would be, I would say, the Galaxy Buds Plus. They're a little bit on the large side in terms of how much room they take up in my ear, but I find that they fit a little bit more fitted than do the Momentums. Jack Warman saying, sounds like the Galaxy Buds Plus are a winner. Sound, fit, battery life, call quality. Curious about the allegedly upcoming Galaxy Beans. So yeah, Jack, thanks for mentioning the Galaxy Beans. I don't think that's going to be the official name, at least. I don't think it'll be the official. Yeah, I don't think it'll be the official name, but I kind of hope so. If you haven't seen the Galaxy Beans, go ahead and go into Google. I can't do that for you guys right now. I'm not set up to do this, but go into Google, search for Galaxy Bean, Samsung Galaxy Bean. If you miss Samsung, you might find something weird. But it's like there's like these rumors or leaks coming out about this new Samsung True Wireless IEM that has a fit that looks like it's not creating like a seal in your ear canal like these IEMs are doing. It looks like it fits a little bit more loosely, kind of like the original AirPods, which I'm a fan of. And the shape of them is just really pretty unique. So I'm excited about that. The one thing I really do hope that Samsung does is gets away from the single tap functionality. Like I don't want a single tap on a True Wireless IEM to do anything. It's just way too easy to accidentally activate pause and play, in my opinion. Sky, sorry, I can't pronounce that. You gave us the good and the bad. What's the ugly? Ooh, if I were to say, what is the ugly of the Sennheisers? I don't know that there's anything really ugly about them, if I'm perfectly honest. You know, the thing that probably bothers me the most about them is that flaky auto pause behavior when I take these things out of my ears, because I really want that to work well. I like that it works really well on the AirPods, and I miss that it doesn't exist on the Galaxy Buds. So I want it to work well, but I actually found myself disabling it through the app because it was just so flaky that I would rather not have that functionality at all. Actually, that actually does make me think of one thing that is ugly that I'm gonna show you on screen, and we'll see if we can get this thing to work. All right, let's see, don't look at my password, please. All right, so the one thing I wanted to show you, we got these things sitting outside their case, is this app that these things come with, all right? So what is it called? It's not called Sennheiser because that would make too much sense. It's called Smart Control. Here you can see this little confirmation that we are using aptX, which is cool. So now the app has to connect to the buds, and they're not connected right away. I'm not sure why that is. It's a little bit of a bummer, but you're probably not going to be launching this app all the time. So here's where you've got access to those settings I talked about. Oof, earbud customization. This is where I talked about those very elaborate controls. Look how complicated that can be. This is how I've got mine set up to be relatively simple, but the ugly, you were asking me about the ugly. Look at this equalizer. So like a lot of other devices like these, the Galaxy Buds have got a similar thing. If you don't like the sound signature out of the box, the app that these things come with, I'm gonna do that later because that takes like an hour to update the firmware in these things. But anyway, if you don't like the sound out of the box, ostensibly you can mold it and customize it to your preference here with this app. But this is the equalizer. Look at this. How am I gonna, for real? What does that mean? Frankly, I cannot, there's nothing I can do with this equalizer to make these things sound better. In my opinion, I don't know, maybe that's a thing that you will enjoy tweaking, but in my opinion, that equalizer in that app is kind of ugly. I don't really care too much. I don't mind it that it's not that great, but yeah, it's not that great. Brandon Grant, thank you for the donation. You guys don't need to do that, but appreciate it when you do. Brandon Grant was asking, hey, I'm not sure if you've been doing this, but it would be really cool if in your Bluetooth headphone earbud reviews you did microphone tests. So, that's interesting. So the reason I almost never talk about microphones on wireless earbuds or anything that's got a microphone on it is that ostensibly, like, that's mostly useful for making phone calls, and I almost never make phone calls. That said, I don't know, maybe this is something I should start doing, because even though I don't make phone calls, what I have been doing a lot lately is video conferencing, right? Not just here talking to you guys on YouTube, but at work. I spend a lot of time in this room talking to people that are not in this room, and maybe that is a pretty good opportunity to test microphones. I haven't been doing that. Mostly I just use the microphone built into my Mac, but I don't know, maybe that's something I should consider. Thanks for the suggestion, Brandon. Sanan was asking, off topic, what do you prefer more, Comply or Dakoni tips? And the best answer to that is I've never tried Dakoni tips. I don't have any Dakoni foam tips, so I can't answer that question. But the other answer to that question is that frankly, I don't use foam tips very often. Mostly when I go to foam tips, it's because, well, so switching from silicone tips to foam tips, like any kind of tip rolling, will have some side effect on the sound signature, and sometimes it'll have an effect on the tonality of an IEM. If there is a particular effect that I'm going after, I might try a foam tip, right? If the treble might be a little bit too hot, sometimes I'll go to foam tips, and especially comply tips, because they've got like that wax guard kind of like, it's just like a filter that's built into the ear tip, and that can have the effect of attenuating some of the treble energy, which can make some earphones that are vaguely unlistenable. It can make them listenable. But for the most part, I don't use foam tips in general. I prefer a silicone tip, partly because that's what comes with things, and I generally want to review things the way that they come. And generally, you know, that's worked out well for me. But I also find that silicone tips are they're more durable, right? I can clean them, I can wash them, I don't have to be super gentle with them. Whereas foam tips, they're kind of a commodity that will over time deteriorate. And I don't know, I've got like an issue with consumable items. This is the same issue I have in video games. I never use health potions because I don't like using things that get used up. That's a really weird reason to not use foam tips, but that's actually pretty accurate. Shovik is asking, do I like the sound signature soundstage of hybrid drivers, planar, balanced, or something else? I gotta say, like, I don't have the sense that any particular driver type is necessarily sort of destined to sound a particular way. I mean, what I've definitely noticed is that balanced armatures in the bass region don't have the same punch as the bass of a nice dynamic driver. But that said, like, not every dynamic driver has good bass, and there's some IEMs that are more expensive than most of the stuff I've tried. But there's some IEMs that I know only use balanced armatures for bass, and people seem pretty happy with the bass on those. So again, like, I don't think it's like sort of an inherent quality of a balanced armature. It's just that maybe it's more difficult to get that bass slam out of a BA. So what the question was, do I like the sound signature of one or the other? I don't know. I think my favorite IEMs tend to be balanced armature IEMs, and part of it's going to be, I don't know, maybe like the mid-range resolution tends to come out with balanced armatures. Again, like, I don't want to say that a dynamic driver can't do that, but I think honestly, more for me, the reason why I tend to prefer BA sets, or the sets that I prefer happen to be BAs, is actually more down to the construction, more so than the sound quality, right? So obviously sound quality is very important to me, but how it fits and how it plugs into my ear and how easy it is and how comfortable, that also matters to me a lot. And it seems that with balanced armatures, the manufacturers have a little bit more control, a little bit more options in terms of creating a mold that will fit the human ear. So generally, I find BA earphones tend to be my favorite. That said, the one that I've been using the most lately is the Moondrop Blessing 2. I've got it sitting over there, and that's a hybrid, so I don't know. That's not a very good answer, but the short of it is that I don't really have any strong preference, right? My preferences aren't so much about the driver types. It's more about the sound, the fit, the build, and all that package, right? The effects more so than the mechanics behind it. Tim Stevens, dude, update them first. So I did update these things right out of the box. Well, right out of the box, they had no battery charge, but I got them charged up a week ago, updated them. The update took about 40 to 45 minutes, so it took a long time. But they have been updated the entire time that I've been listening to them. Just now I launched the app, and it showed me that there's a new update. So I'm not gonna do that right now, otherwise these things will be unusable for the next 40 minutes, but probably right after this I will. I don't know that I'm gonna expect, I don't know, I'm kind of curious. They don't say anything about what the update does. That would be really useful to know. Daniel Garita says, someone who understands nothing about audio designed that. Daniel, I assume you're talking about that app. And yeah, that app is not an app for audiophiles, which is interesting because what is Sennheiser if not an audio company? And you would expect that that sort of thing Sennheiser might do better than other folks, but I don't know. I mean, it's not like the Galaxy Buds Plus app. It's got a couple of preset EQs that you can choose between, but it's not, you know, full 10-band EQ or anything like that. And then the AirPods Pro, it's Apple, so you don't have any option. You got to use it exactly the way Apple wants you to use it. So I guess maybe I can't be too hard on it, but yeah, that app is not useful for me. Terry Meyer asking, have I done a review of the Libertone Track Air Plus? And if so, how do they compare? I haven't. I don't think I've even heard of the Libertone Track Air Plus. In fact, I'm probably saying that wrong because it's the first time I've seen that word. And I apologize, but I haven't tried that. I'm kind of curious what about that has your interest. I know another IM or another true wireless IM that I'm interested to try that I haven't had a chance to yet. I'm gonna get this one wrong too. It's like the Lipertech Tevi, something like that. That one, supposedly, it looks like the sound signature on it is a little bit etymotic-like, which is unique because most of the time with these true wireless IEMs, they're going after a consumer audience. So they're going for a bassy sound. You know, obviously here the momentum's very bassy. I think that the bass on the AirPods Pro and the Galaxy Buds Plus is tasteful, but definitely elevated. The Lipertech Tevi, I'm probably saying that wrong. That one has my interest, but I haven't tried it out. Sunhouse saying hello. Hello. Daniel asking another question. How to know if an IEM will fit before buying? I can't spend that much money without knowing that. In my country, you can't return stuff like this for hygiene reasons. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? If I were to buy this from Amazon, plug it into my ears, doesn't fit, and send it back to Amazon, what's the side effect of that? Amazon, by the way, would definitely take it because they're a pretty consumer-friendly company, but probably what would happen is they would get the product back and one of two things would happen with it. One, they might clean it back up and package it for resale as like sort of an open box thing. You know, sometimes you can buy things on Amazon that are in that state. In fact, I just got a mouse recently that was like that. I cleaned it when I got it, but I assume it was cleaned by the retailer. But the other thing that a lot of these manufacturers do, or these retailers do, is they just take stuff that gets returned to them and then they sell it kind of wholesale in just these giant boxes. You might see this stuff on YouTube if you type in like massive tech unboxing or something like that, right? You'll find some guy that paid $1,000 for a box this big, just full of random tech stuff, and you don't get control over it. I think this is kind of like an arrangement that's made for maybe like eBay buyers or eBay sellers to just get a bunch of stuff from Amazon. Who knows what it is? Maybe they paid, you know, $100 for a pair of Sennheisers and they'll put them on eBay, you know, open box for $200 and make $100 profit. So that's kind of what happens here in the United States. I'm not sure what in your country happens. Wow, back to your question, how to know if an IM will fit. That's, unfortunately, man, that's a really tough thing to figure out. Especially like some people, just your ear shape isn't that universal. I'm pretty fortunate in that my ear shape tends to be pretty universal. I haven't really found anything that doesn't fit me, but I have found some IMs that don't fit me comfortably. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to deal with that, right? Just like look at reviews, look at the shape. Hopefully you've tried some things that you know fit in your ear well, and that you can look for things that are of a similar shape. Generally, like the more fitted a shape, something like the Maga OCK5 or the Moondrop Blessing 2, the more fitted, the riskier it is that it's not going to fit perfectly comfortably in your ear. So that's something to consider. And then generally, I think the smaller the product, the easier to fit, but that's fairly obvious. So you probably didn't need me to say that one. Jinu Prince asking thoughts on the Skullcandy Crushers, and I don't think I've tried the Skullcandy Crushers. Hold on, let me think. I've tried some Skullcandy headphones, over-ear headphone that have like a bass switch on it. Is that the Crusher? Because that was silly. Like it was straight silly. Not something I would enjoy. I listened to for fun, but it was fun to experience it for, you know, the 3 minutes or so that I played with it. Frixty saying, hey, what's up from South Africa? What's up from San Francisco? Well, San Francisco adjacent. Futaku Lounge saying if a thing isn't comfortable, it doesn't matter how good it sounds, and that's totally true. Like, there's some other IEMs that I've tried, like QDC's, the Neptune and the Uranus. They both kind of fit into my ear pretty well, but they just become uncomfortable at a moment or after a certain amount of time listening to them, and you know, that really does just kind of put a damper on the product. What's some other, I guess, actually. All right, this is gonna be a reference that's gonna lose me some cred, but the Beats Solo Pro, I reviewed those a while back. Of the active noise canceling headphones that I've tried, those are actually probably the best sounding, and that's not a high bar, but I do think that those things sound better than things like the Sony XM3s and the Bose 700s, but comfort-wise, they're just a little bit clampy on the head, and they're not as easy to listen to because of that as the Sonys and the Bose. Terry was just following up saying, I saw another reviewer that the Libretones were as good as the Sennheisers for less money. So, I don't know, yeah, I would be interested to try them out, but probably not gonna end up with that opportunity. Man of Culture saying, have I ever tried Audeze eye signs? And I haven't. Those look pretty interesting. So the Audeze eye signs are like they're an in-ear monitor with an open back design. Like, they almost kind of look like a Koss KSC75, right? It's like a big thing that sits on the outside of your ear, but instead of being like a clip headphone, it's actually an in-ear monitor. I have not tried those. Those are planar magnetics as well, so they look pretty interesting. Although I'm not a big fan of the fact that they appear to require EQ in order to sound good. And I know they've got like some hardware that makes that EQ easy, but I don't know how I feel about that. Vic Patel saying, have your thoughts on the JVC FDX1 changed with the IEMs I've tested over time? Still one of the best sounding. Any particular misgivings on that pair? So I would say that no, my opinion on that has not changed. So if you go back and watch my review, everything I said in that review, I would probably say again. And that's not true of every review I've done, by the way. But the FDX1 is one that I spent quite a bit of time with, and so I'm pretty settled on the opinions that I had in that review. And in fact, I've actually was listening to the FDX1 earlier this week, so it's still an IEM I love. In terms of sound signature, let's see, versus, like, the only real comparison that I have, or the only IEM that I think compares well with it, is the Moondrop Blessing 2. I think both of those, I would say, are my two best sounding IEMs. And sound signature wise, they're a little bit different. They're both relatively neutral, but I think the Moondrop Blessing has got a little bit more upper mid-range and sub-bass focus, whereas the FDX1 is got maybe a little bit more treble. And I think the bass impact on the FDX1 is still a thing that I go to. Like, I love the bass impact. Not that the Blessing doesn't have, you know, pretty solid bass on its own, but there's something to the punch of the FDX1 that I really like. I also think that there's just generally a more physical, visceral feeling to the sound of the FDX1 versus the Blessing, and maybe that's sort of the dynamic driver versus balanced armature. Again, I just got done talking about how these are not like essential attributes, but they're patterns that you see, and it does seem to be a pattern that dynamic drivers tend to feel just a little bit more visceral, and I do get that with the FDX1. I would say that tonality-wise, I prefer the Blessing, and then in terms of, again, that feel, there is something about the FDX1 that I do prefer. The only really misgiving that I have with the FDX1 is the fit. It's just not the best, and it's not a bad fit, it's not uncomfortable. It just takes more time for me to like kind of wiggle it into my ear and get it into a nice secure position. Whereas something like the Blessing, I can just whoosh, slot it in, and for me that makes a big difference in terms of how often I want to go to that IEM. So because of that, I probably use the Blessing 2 more, but the FDX1 has still definitely got something for me. Casey Haim saying Skull Candy are for fashion, not for sound. Sure, maybe. I think, you know, to some degree, so are a lot of things. Like I don't want to personally put boundaries on what people should be thinking about. Like what are your personal preferences and your values? It's gonna differ from everyone. Like for me, how a thing looks actually does matter. I don't think there's anything that I listen to that I would actually say looks ugly. Do I have anything that I listen to? I mean, you could argue that some of the cost stuff I like looks ugly, but I like the aesthetic of it. So I don't know. Aesthetics do matter to me. Skull candy aesthetics don't actually necessarily appeal to me, frankly. That would probably stop me listening to skull candies before I got to the sound. Vanak Pech saying, hello from Cambodia. How's it going? What time is it over there? I would guess morning-ish time. Ben A, hello from Wyoming. What's up in Wyoming? It's a couple hours later than here, so what, like 8:30 there maybe? What's the weather like in Wyoming right now? I'd say here in California today was actually just about perfect, a little bit on the warm side, which for me means like 70 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not actually that warm, but where I'm at, 70 is actually pretty warm. Sorry, you're actually asking a question. Have I ever seen the File M3 Pro? They seem pretty interesting. So I believe the File M3 Pro is their new digital audio player, kind of like positioned, I think in the same price range as the File M3K. Sort of like a tall, slender, sub $100 DAP. That does look pretty interesting to me, especially because I think a lot of people want a nice MP3 player, a nice audio player that costs less than $100. And I think the M3K is actually a pretty decent player. I wish that it had more buttons. The M3 Pro seems to have the same number of buttons. Seems like it's still limited to 3 buttons. But it does look like the rest of the interface is all touchscreen, and so I would expect that it's a little bit better than like the touch-sensitive panel. That distinction might not seem obvious here in description, but I have a suspicion that if you were to use them, the difference between a touchscreen and a touch-sensitive panel would be pretty big. Touchscreen would probably be better. Casey Haim saying, didn't hear anything good sounding, active noise canceling. I'm gonna have to infer a little bit about what you're saying. Correct me if I got this wrong, but I think I agree. There's not a lot, like active noise canceling headphones seem to be the target of the general broader culture of headphones right now. Everyone wants an active noise canceling headphones. Sony XM3s are kind of the king of it. Whereas Bose, you know, that's kind of like the alternative, maybe for the more mature folks. I don't know, is that the aesthetic? So that's kind of like the holy grail. That's where a lot of electronic companies are focusing their attention on. And I gotta be honest, I haven't heard anything in that market that I love to listen to. Again, I think the Beats Solo Pro is probably the best sounding active noise canceling headphone that I've listened to. And it does, like, it's a pretty nice, enjoyable sound, but it's not audiophile sound. It's like the mid-range isn't like especially high resolution, and part of that's because it's Bluetooth, but I think part of it's just because it's tuned for a mainstream audience, and I don't know. I agree. I haven't heard anything with active noise canceling that I love to listen to, but that's also mostly true of anything Bluetooth, right? I think the Galaxy Buds Plus are frankly probably the closest that I've gotten to like an audiophile type sound in a Bluetooth device. Shovik's asking, Blon 03 with a 16-core cable or the TIN T3? It's really gonna depend on what your sound preferences are, right? I think that the TIN T3, like the TIN T2, but even more so, is gonna be pretty strong for vocals. So if you like vocals in your music, you like a little bit more treble energy and you don't care too much about a lot of bass, the TIN T3 would be your option. But if you have a suspicion that you're gonna be like, that's not enough bass in that, I would go with the Blondes. I think the Blondes are a pretty good option if you are a bass-seeking listener. Personally, I would probably go with the Tins though. I like me some vocals. Son House saying, for the moment, I experiment better audio with my Koss KSC 75 than any of my, yeah man, the KSC 75s are so good. If you don't have a pair of Koss KSC75s and you live in a place where you can get them for like 15 bucks, I can go on Amazon right now and get them shipped to me for like 15 bucks, right? If you have that as an option available to you, and 15 bucks doesn't matter that much to you, you should probably try the KSC75s. Those things are seriously, seriously killer. They might look goofy, but they're seriously killer to sound. Janu Prince is asking about the Skull Candy Sesh. Again, sorry, I don't have much thoughts on Skull Candies. I apologize. Keshawn asking, what do I think about the Soundcore Liberty Pro? I haven't heard an Anchor set, and actually in a while. I think the last Anchor set I reviewed was like the Soundbuds Plus. It was still, you know, back when the wired sets were the sort of dominant Bluetooth earphone. So that was the last Anchor I listened to. It was well tuned from what I recall. And I would expect that the Liberty Pro 2 is also fairly well tuned, pretty tasteful, but I haven't had a chance to listen to it for myself, so I actually can't say. So Sunhouse saying, I own Blonde 03 and the Tin T4. I'm waiting for the CK5. Will I change my mind? I don't know what your mind is. You didn't state an opinion there, so I'm curious, what is your mind? What do you actually prefer between the Blonde BL03 and the Tin T4? Personally, I'm a Tin T4 guy, but that's because, again, I like me some vocals. Sabir's saying, have I tried the Sennheiser ANC over-ear headphones? And I haven't. I've had questions about the Sennheiser Momentum over-ear headphones. Haven't been able to try those things out. You know, what I have tried is, I've tried, you know, the Bose QC25s, the QC35s, the Sony XM3s, some B&W PX something or other. I can't remember the name of it. So I've tried, oh, and obviously the Beats Solo Pro. So I've tried quite a few different over-ear noise canceling headphones, but I haven't had a chance to try Sennheisers. This is kind of my first foray into Sennheiser consumer audio. Again, big reminder, Sennheiser HD600, let me just go right here, this bad boy, that's gotta be my favorite headphone, but it's not exactly a consumer oriented headphone. And then Casey's asking, have I heard Aureolis's IEMs? They're amazing all around sounding for me. So the only Aureolis that I have heard is the Aureolis, oh my gosh, I should know this right off the top of my head. The Forsteni, something like that. A buddy of mine has got the Aureolis Forsteni, and from what I remember, that is actually fairly sharp V sound signature with some treble emphasis and nice big bass. I think it's a hybrid IEM, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. So I kind of talked about this when I was talking about the Sennheisers. I tend to prefer neutrally tuned IEMs, but I don't demand neutrality in my tonality, and those Forstenis are definitely not neutral from what I remember. But I still actually quite enjoyed them. The one problem I had with those Aureolis Forstenis is fit-wise, I found that the stem was actually a little bit on the chonk side, so in my ear I had a difficulty getting them comfortable. Part of it might have been the tips that my friend had on them didn't fit in my ear very well, so I don't know, that has prevented me from listening to them for much longer than that. But I don't know, I've been talking for way too long. That's gonna be the end of this video. Thank you guys for tuning in for the Sennheiser Momentum True Wireless 2 review. As a recap, I gave these things 3 stars out of 5. I rank these things below the Galaxy Buds Plus and the AirPods Pro, but I think there are some reasons that you might like this. So if you missed those reasons, go ahead and go back to the beginning of this video, watch my review. Otherwise, again, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, ding the bell. You'll get alerted next time I go live, and I'll see you guys on the next super review. Cheers.